What's going on, everybody? It's FREEDO here, still on the hotel mic. But before I left to get on a plane to go to Philadelphia, I played a complete day on the PTR, playing in custom games with high-level players and viewers. Friends J3 and Samito stopped in to test things as well. Then I also played in quick play for quite a long time and wanted to really test and stress the numerous buffs and nerfs that they put onto it. We're going to talk about the entire patch in totality in today's video, but the number one thing that I want to get across is that this Tracer buff is way better than you think. It is insane. I think a lot of people, when they read the patch notes, they saw, oh, Tracer has 3 meters of increased range. What's the big deal? But that's a misread of it and also misses the point of why that's so good. First of all, what it actually means is that Tracer's fall off damage begins at 13 meters instead of 10. So even at 15, 16, 17 meters away, she's dealing more damage on the PTR than she does on live currently. So no matter what, your poke damage as Tracer goes up a ton. There's a bit of a meme going around that she's now Tracer 76, and I don't think it's inaccurate. You're going to see on the gameplay in the background that the range damage increase is very significant. In plenty of duels, I think especially you're going to notice this up against characters that are shaped with a hitbox that fits Tracer's spread. So if a character's too small, you may not be able to notice much of a difference as far as a duel is concerned. But if they're boxy shaped like McCree, Brigitte, or any tank in the game, yeah, Tracer is a tank buster yet again. Remember when they were worried so much about Tracer's pulse bomb farming tanks in the dive meta? Well, now her pulse pistols whittles them down. The way I want to explain this is that I think we all have to remember back to the era of dive where Tracer ruled the world, and she was the most efficient character to either go in aggressive or just simply harass and farm up pulse bomb and win the fight that way. She had 2 ways to win, and since she was so hard to lock down, she was an extreme S tier pick. Well, now keep in mind you're going to charge your ult faster because you're just dealing more poke damage all the time. And as we know, in the new era of global ult nerfs, ults that charge quickly have huge ripple effects in gameplay. And because pulse bomb can be such a reliable kill or bit of burst with focus fire, it's a game changer in the ult fight. But even beyond it, remember, it's not like they reverted that armor change on tanks. I think they should now, because Tracer can just shred it with headshots. But what's most important about all of this that I've yet to mention is the distance control Tracer has up against things that are supposed to counter her. It's this next part that sort of breaks the design of the game. Let me give you a few examples. McCree's stun has a max range of 7 meters. Back when your fall off began at 10 meters, you really wanted to play at 10 meters or less, getting close on a character like McCree to deal meaningful damage. Well, now your fall off doesn't start until 13 meters out. So there's a 5-meter window where he just whiffs flashbang at you and physically cannot touch you, and you're still dealing full damage on him. Not to mention, targets are easier to hit at longer range. So this not only makes Tracer stronger, it makes her easier and harder to counter, all of those things at once. Similar characters like Brigitte have a stun range of about 6 meters. There are some range disables like Roadhog Hook, and Sombra Hack is a massive 15 meters away, but Tracer's so fast and can interrupt her. The analogy I thought of to describe what Blizzard have done with Tracer is essentially take all the old dive meta principles and adjust her for power creep inflation. Back in the day, everything was way weaker. Characters like Doomfist, Mei, Sombra, Hanzo, even McCree, they were all gimmicky in the era of dive because you could always say, well, why not just run Tracer and poke them down and outduel them, dodge what they can do? She was always a better option. Now, to the game's credit to some degree, I kind of like it, where a lot of these cooldown-based characters are in the mix and competitive, but now, for Tracer to compete with them yet again, she's been given this superpower, where she just doesn't even have to come close to the things that are supposed to disable her. We're gonna stick at the damage category for now and then go on to the other characters. If it wasn't for this massive Tracer buff, I would also be saying this new Sombra change is incredible as well. The way it works now is that you can set a translocator and then be charging up a cooldown for your next one as long as it doesn't get destroyed. Because of that, Sombra essentially gets the Junkrat having 2 minds effect, where you can do mobility plays multiple times, retreat up to a high ground, then go aggro and make another response play. This is incredibly important because Sombra's rotations in her footsie battle is really how she caught out enemy DPSs or did much of anything. The problem that arose, and I think you could see this if you ever watch Fitzy is here play Sombra in the live version of the game. I know this as well because me and Samito played up against him recently. What Fitzy does on Sombra is just wait for the enemy Doomfist to attack, doing nothing, just standing around in the backline, denying Doomfist entry to come in. This is a pretty boring and uninteresting way to play play, and what Fitzy or a lot of high-level Sombra players would rather do is go farm EMP and manipulate the fight dynamically. Well, if you do that up against the live version of Doomfist, once he knows you're on the left side, well, he just push the right side and get an insta-kill there. So instead, what these high-level Sombra players had to do is play so defensively just to hope to hack him, but even that was pretty inefficient because Doom is so fast, it's possible for him to sneak in his abilities without Sombra even being able to get a hack off because he can just get out so fast. So what this new translocator does is allow a Sombra player to go flank, manipulate the tanks, or try to get a pick on the backside of the fight, and then return to their own backline or make a play in the air or do anything in response to the crazy movement that Doomfist has. So it essentially lets Sombra retreat, then attack very quickly. This is pretty important because without this, Tracer would just run rampant. I think she already will, honestly, but with Doomfist's multiple movement cooldowns, now Sombra can kind of keep up with him. So with those two changes alone, Doomfist already would be much weaker. On top of that, Doomfist also got nerfed into the ground. I'm sorry, but I just think this is way overkill. The shield's nerf I can understand. Characters just statistically having too much health is boring to play against and not very fun. Okay, bringing it down to 30 per ability, that's fine with me. But his rocket punch now takes 40% longer to reach full charge. In some instances, this doesn't matter. So if you're just trying to do a quick click of the ability to rocket jump away as an escape, that's not changed. Or if you have a ton of time standing behind your tank, charging up on the enemy tank, where you fully won the footsie battle and there's no way they're getting out, you're not going to notice the difference. Where you're really going to notice it is anytime Doomfist is out in the open up against anything. Any character now that can move should be able to dodge this, because the result is, you know, the Doomfist can't get very far. So you can just hold one arm out, patiently waiting for him to charge up his punch, oh no, and dodge out of the way. It's not even hard. On any map that's too open, Doomfist is instantly too hard to play, in my opinion. For example, a character like Genji, who only has double jump and normally felt Doomfist could fight him basically anywhere, now feels pretty comfortable out in open space up against Doom. As long as you stay like 10 meters away, he's not going to close that distance with punch. He can do it with his other abilities, of course, but they're not as scary as punch was. So in effect, between the other characters getting better and Doom getting far, far worse, I think he's put down into an extreme niche category where you have to be an expert to play him or play him on a perfect map for him. The first two parts of King's Row, Anubis B on defense, those are still good, but if the map's too open, he's just done. I really think they should reconsider the punch change and at least put it down to like 1.2 seconds for a full punch instead of 1.4, but I understand why they're doing this because the player base really hates Doomfist being top of the meta. But I think they kind of were solving that by making other things competitive, and it's not like there's not a new flanker that's going to go uncontested. Tracer's just going to be replacing Doomfist with godlike flanker power, so we're kind of out of the kettle into the frying pan, or however that phrase goes with this one. So now with the damage out of the way, let's move on to the tanks. I think the question everyone wants answered is double barrier dead? Well, truthfully, if you were Masters or below, I don't think double barrier was actually meta for you. You see, the truth is, double barrier had a lot more teamwork and skill shots from the tanks that made it meta at a high level of play, and as soon as I see any gameplay below GM or pro, both tanks are just shooting shields, even though that's not what you're supposed to do, and they just sort of stand around and exist and don't die very easily. But I already thought they were extremely overrated in ranked, and lost to any tank play that knows how to press a W properly, and get past them and get good ground, and all the tanking principles still hold up. Reinhardt destroyed them. So, because of that, I do somewhat anticipate for these nerfs to compound and topple like a house of cards. We did try to have teams run double barrier or run it ourselves, and it did feel like there was now gaps for the shields to break, with both an extra second on Orisa's barrier cooldown and Sigma's shield having a slower regen rate, making it more rewarding to break it, but also, and I think more importantly, the 1 second delay on Sigma's shield is massive. Once the shield's out, you know you have a full second to W past it, and characters like Tracer or dive tanks, they just eat that alive. Sigma used to have the security blanket of instantly recalling his barrier and putting it out again, allowing him to run away all the while dealing huge damage with his hyperspheres and accretion rock. Well, now he's far more flimsy up against mobility, and I would say pushed into the role he was intended to have, which is sieging up against bunker comps. But because dive's getting buffed so much, that might not even be necessary anymore, because what they've done with Winston and Diva is make their tanking capabilities way better. Winston's bubble feels like it lasts forever if you place it appropriately. Yeah, if the entire enemy team's focusing it, it gets shredded like it used to. But if you offset it a little bit and create a good dive, splitting off the team a little bit, zoning out critical critical characters like the healers or a ranged DPS threat, the bubble gets massive value. Winston himself is still incredibly squishy, so much so that I really wish they would just revert those armor changes they put through in the GOATS meta. I see no reason to keep armor weak. There's a lot of characters that desperately need it, and I think the fun of playing tank and knowing you have a little bit of armor health to work with goes hand in hand. Whereas if armor health doesn't feel much better than regular health, well, pretty much when anything looks at you, you just die. So you have to play Winston very cleanly still, but your barrier for your teammates is much more effective. But his face is still susceptible to everything wrecking him. The only thing that's propping him up a bit now is D.Va's defense matrix, which does definitely come up much more regularly than it used to. They've made like 1,000 changes to defense matrix over the years now, and it's kind of weird how it goes in and out from its original design. On the live version of the game, it's nerfed to a point where you might as well all in with it at once, just like it was when it was originally launched. But now, with it having more efficiency, sure, we still retain the delay between uses, which is a common theme between her and Sigma Shield, and okay, I can understand that, but now it's up so often that you more freely can flicker it on for small cooldowns. So in a way, it still feels just as punishing as it used to, which was the reason why they nerfed it to begin with. So I think us as a community and Blizzard just have to come to terms that we're either going to have barriers be incredibly meta, or a super off tank like D.Va that can just gobble up so many different abilities and provide a lot of sustain to the team. One of those things is going to be meta, and I think with the mobility to reposition and go in on dives and how strong Tracer is, there may be a reason for D.Va to be a top pick again, but it's for the same reasons that so many people complained about her, so I'm not really sure how to conclude about this. Because D.Va's so good and has DM so frequently, you can expect characters like Moira to get less value. A character that I definitely think is just going to get left in the dust is Roadhog. Yes, he got a buff. Yes, they're intending for him to be an answer to double shield, but if that's already going away and D.Va Winston get played, Roadhog's going to feel worse than he did in the most recent live version of the game because of how frequently defense matrix is available. Sure, he's better against Doomfist, but he's not really going to be a top meta pick, and Tracer's got much longer range, farming all the tanks. Yes, maybe you can get a hook on her, but otherwise you're just feeding her pulse bomb easily without any way to interact. And even if you do get a hook, D.Va should be there with defense matrix up all the time. The pace of the game goes up significantly. And as I said earlier, a lot of this reminds of old dive meta. We're really used to cooldowns being so good from the GOATS meta onward that I think we all just sort of expect for cooldown combos to be good in the mid-fight. But Blizzard really is buffing dive in a way that your toys and trinkets and immortality fields or Doomfist punches or May walls, they might feel a little gimmicky compared to the straightforward style of play of just focusing down the same target as a team. The biggest roadblock that I haven't yet decided if it's going to maintain is, well, if Doomfist is gone, does that mean we just go back to May Reaper? Both of them destroy the dive tanks, but the reason why I don't think that is because Tracer's mid-range poke playing outside of their range is so significant, and they both have conveniently sized hitboxes for her spread. I think the principles of old dive meta where your tanks dodge damage like that until Tracer farms up poke or you get a good commitment onto something, I think that will come back. Moving on to the last role now, we're going to talk about support. The Moira nerf I don't think is very significant. What is significant is characters like Tracer and Sombra being super powered for this patch, that comps that want to play with Moira in a sort of death ball rushdown playstyle like May Reaper should get farmed on the outsides. Sombra having extra translocators is a really big deal for this. Ult charge rates for EMP will be higher because she can stay in the fight longer, and Tracer's pulse bomb I think beats Coalescence most of the time, remembering it can instantly kill a squishy which the enemy team has to be playing. Perhaps sticking the Moira herself is a bit difficult when she's using Coalescence, but the real pressure point here is which ult charges faster, and then when both are up, which is more effective. I think Pulse Bomb wins in both categories, but it'll take some testing and high-level play to really hash that out. In any case, targeting Moira as either Tracer or Sombra is easier now because her dueling is just worse. As for the other supports, Batiste's Immortality Field getting nerfed doesn't matter too much because most of its best uses were when it's around a corner, untargetable anyway. Where you're really going to notice it is versus things like Genji's Nano Blade, which does 180 damage in a slice. With a little bit of help from a teammate, that means it's one slice to kill it while still probably hitting something on the enemy team, so not really making the Nano Blade be less efficient. That's not to say Genji's back necessarily, because I'm not sure why you have to play him when Sombra and Tracer should be pretty darn good, but that's just an example. A thing to remember is that Batiste gets a buff because Doomfist is worse. If anything, he might be more playable on this next patch than the current live survive one if he turns out to get more value up against dive. Mercy's Valkyrie Beam ignoring barriers is just another thorn in the side of all the barrier spam that's been in the live version of the game, and she low-key is pretty good with Tracer now, because again, she's like a mini Soldier 76. So pocketing her and using her as an escape route could be a legit new way to play the character. And she already was pretty good with dive. I can't believe it's taken so long to mention him in this video, but the Lucio buff is insane. I think Lucio at the highest level of play is most definitely going to be full-time meta again. Having speed boost versus a team that doesn't have it is basically an instant win again. It is so incredibly strong. Now, because of that, a defending Lucio needs to be able to mirror the attacking team's speed amp to ferry his team backwards when they make aggressive moves onto them. I don't mind this in the game again, but when the game's designed this way, it's a bit concerning for lower ranks because realistically, Lucio's pretty hard to play no matter what, even if his cooldown has a ton of value, because doing the rest of his kit just takes so much skill that a lot of players can't really actualize it, and it makes the game a little unfun for them. So I'm a little worried that that comes back again, and we're gonna have 100 more videos talking about how important Lucio is, but the community also just not really being good enough at him. Kind of a catch-22. But with how dominant I think Tracer's going to be, having anything not being able to reposition is just marking it for death. So whether it's going aggressive or peeling back, I think Lucio's a centerpiece support yet again. Support characters that get left out in the dust here a bit, I think, are Zen, for sure, who is still reeling after his nerfs from the GOATS meta. Don't really see a point to keep those. You can revert those as well. There are a few arguments, though, that you could say Zen might make a comeback, because realistically, he never looked good in a barrier-heavy meta. But remember, his utility goes past barriers, past defense matrix, and is the best way to heal your Tracer and have her be superpowered. The only problem is the enemy's probably gonna have a Tracer too, hunting down your Zen. So the question is, what gets played with Zen to make him viable? We saw the era where Mercy was really strong. On some maps, yeah, probably Mercy Zen would work, because if you have dive tanks, you have the Zen to pocket. The other option as well that I think is the next best is Batiste Zen, where yes, Immortality Field did get nerfed, but it's enough to stop a dive in its tracks and give enough time for Zen to survive to get his big damage out and make use of Discord. It got nerfed a little bit, of course, in the GOATS meta, but largely the playstyle remains the same. So it'll be interesting to see if Mercy Zen or Batiste Zen comes into effect. Look for those pairings to work on maps where speed boost doesn't really do enough. Maps like Gibraltar or Numbani, where the vertical game is more important than horizontally closing the distance and jumping up is enough to get where you need to be, that's when Lucio could be subbed out. But otherwise, most of the time, you're going to feel like you're going to get overrun if you can't mirror the speed boost, I think. Because remember, Immortality Field does feel insane on a character like Bastion, but realistically, it's just a budget barrier. And if you play your Winston bubble perfectly, well, that's sort of like an Immortality Field too, right? You can't die or get shot or have cooldowns hit you. It's even better than that, really. So it's going to take finding out who feels safer in that engagement. And there's a good chance that the dive feels pretty safe, with bubble and defense matrix being as reliable as it's going to be. And furthermore, Brigitte is in an odd spot. So I thought she was very underrated in the Doomfist version of the live game, because her cooldowns really messed up Doom. If you trade a punch with Doomfist and he's down in your backline, it's a free kill on a carry hero. That's a ton of value. Her flail being really responsive and quick and snappy, big deal for deflecting dives. So if the enemy is playing Winston Diva, Brig will have a really strong playstyle there. The problem is when it's not deflecting tanks, Tracer just runs rampant up against a character with low mobility who's expecting to try to get a stun off. Tracer can play approximately 2 galaxies away from Brigitte's lethal range with stun, and I don't know how Blizzard's ever going to fix that, now that they've sort of unleashed the beast that is Tracer back into the meta. Does Brig get massive buffs, dramatically increasing her overall healing output, or does she become a super tanky character again? I'm not really sure which route they're going to go, but I actually think she's going to fare worse than she did on the double barrier meta, because at least against Doom, she interacted with him in how he wanted to play, whereas against Tracer, unless she makes a mistake, I mean, she can play at range versus you and do full damage. It's just not even fair. I don't think Brig has any chance against Tracer, because what other support are you going to run? You need Lucio, well then the Tracer poke gets better. The only way she gets healing is if the tanks overcommit, but even then, she's a really easy target for Tracer to shoot in the back. I think Brig's just sort of like Zen with a shield. She has some cool damage abilities, and yeah, she CCs, but she's just too flimsy for this level of medium range poke that's going to be barraging the backline. And actually, characters like Ana, who have a much more slender hitbox, fare better, because at least she can hit a sleep, has a lot of healing, and a nade to protect herself. Yes, she's diveable, and her ability abilities get beat by the dive tanks, but she does have some plays to make. I think it's probably going to be more Mercy or Moira though, because if you play anything else, it just won't be able to escape from Tracer. So that's my evaluation on the new patch. It'll be interesting to see if they make further changes, because some of them seem drastic in one direction and like overcorrections, and other ones revert back to playstyles that I thought they didn't want in the game, so I'm a little bit confused. But at the very least, I do think this will be a more fun version of the game to play, but it doesn't necessarily bring us to a utopia where a ton of different things are viable. I think it's leaning into power creep in a big way, where I'd rather see mass nerfs instead and try to move towards heroes being more reasonable rather than being nutty. But I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. If you enjoyed the video, please be sure to leave it a like. It really does help us out and lets us know that you're enjoying the content. And if you haven't already, please subscribe and be sure to hit the bell icon so that you actually get notified when our videos go live. Link in the description is our Twitter, where we tweet out news, updates, and dank memes. That's been it for me. I've been FREEDO for Your Overwatch. We'll see you guys next time.